The afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the old town of Munich. The street outside was bustling with life as people moved in and out of shops, cafes, and boutiques. Inside one of the apartments in an upscale neighborhood, Martin Weiss stood silently by the window, staring out but not truly seeing the world beyond the glass. His mind was elsewhere. It was a Saturday, and Saturdays used to mean something. They were sacred, reserved for long breakfasts at their favorite cafe, followed by a walk along the Isar River. But those days were gone now, distant memories that felt more like echoes of someone else's life. Martin was 40 years old, a successful architect with a career that had earned him both respect and wealth. His meticulous attention to detail had landed him contracts to design some of the most iconic structures across Europe. But despite his professional accomplishments, there was a void in his life that no amount of work could fill. His wife, Amélie, had once been the light in his world. She was 34 now, still as strikingly beautiful as the day they met in Paris. Back then, she was a vibrant art student, filled with passion, creativity, and an infectious energy that captivated everyone around her. Martin had been instantly drawn to her. She was free-spirited and artistic, everything that Martin, with his methodical and calculated mind, was not. Their differences complemented each other, or so it had seemed at the time. But somewhere along the way, something had changed. The woman he had fallen in love with seemed to be slipping away, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't reach her. The tension had been building for months. It started subtly. Missed dinner plans, late-night phone calls she wouldn't explain, and a growing distance between them. Martin had noticed the change, but had convinced himself that it was just a rough patch, something every couple went through. He hadn't wanted to believe that it could be something more, but deep down, he knew. One evening, he came home earlier than usual from the firm. Amélie wasn't expecting him, and when he walked into their apartment, the sight of her sitting on the couch with her phone pressed to her ear sent a jolt of suspicion through him. She looked startled, almost guilty when she saw him. Her conversation had ended abruptly. "Who was that?" Martin had asked, trying to keep his tone casual, though his heart pounded in his chest. "Just a friend," she'd replied, a little too quickly. The lie was obvious, but Martin didn't press her. He wasn't the confrontational type. Instead, he gave her space, hoping that she would come to him when she was ready to talk. But the days passed, and she didn't. Instead, she seemed to drift further away, spending more and more time out of the house, coming home later and later. One cold, rainy night, Martin's suspicions were confirmed. He had been working late on a project when his phone buzzed. It was a message from his colleague and close friend, Lucas. "I just saw Amélie at a restaurant with Victor Reeder. Thought you should know Victor Reeder." The name hit him like a punch to the gut. Victor was a prominent businessman in Munich's elite circles, known for his charm and arrogance in equal measure. Martin had met him at several social events, and while they had never been friends, he had always sensed that Victor harbored a certain disdain for him, a quiet arrogance that came from the success Victor had achieved at a young age. More than that, though, Martin had seen how Victor looked at Amélie. It had been subtle, but the signs were there, the lingering glances, the way he leaned in a little too close when they spoke at parties, and the unmistakable admiration in his eyes when he watched her. Martin hadn't wanted to believe that Victor could be more than a fleeting temptation, but now, with this message from Lucas, the truth was staring him in the face. Amélie was having an affair. The next few weeks were a blur for Martin. He didn't confront her immediately. He couldn't. Instead, he tried to act as if nothing had changed, hoping that maybe, just maybe, this was a mistake. Perhaps Amélie was just going through a phase, something she would snap out of once she realized what she was doing. But the cracks in their relationship were growing wider. Amélie became more distant, and Martin's attempts to connect with her only seemed to push her further away. She spent more time with Victor, and Martin knew it. Every time she left the house, he was filled with a sense of dread. Knowing that she wasn't just meeting friends or going to the gallery as she claimed, she was with him. It wasn't long before Martin's worst fears were confirmed. One evening, after another late night at work, Martin came home to find the house dark. Emily wasn't there. He waited, pacing the length of the living room, checking his phone for any message, any sign that she would be coming home. But there was nothing. Hours passed, and his anxiety grew. Finally, just after midnight, the door creaked open, and Emily stepped inside. She was soaking wet from the rain, her hair plastered to her face, and her eyes widened in surprise when she saw Martin sitting on the couch waiting for her. "Where were you?" he asked quietly, though the answer was already clear. Emily hesitated, then dropped her gaze to the floor. "With Victor," she admitted. Martin felt the world fall out from beneath him. Even though he had known, hearing her say it was like a knife twisting in his chest. "How long?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Martin, please." "How long?" he repeated, more forcefully this time. Emily took a deep breath, then met his gaze. 6 months, she said softly. 6 months. Half a year of lies, deceit, and betrayal. Martin's hands trembled, but he clenched them into fists to steady himself. "You've been with him for 6 months?" he asked, his voice cracking. Emily nodded, tears beginning to well in her eyes. But Martin didn't want her tears. He didn't want her apology, her regret. What he wanted was his wife back, the woman he had fallen in love with, the woman who had once loved him. "Why?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Why him?" Emily looked away, unable to meet his gaze. She stood there, drenched and defeated, as the silence between them stretched painfully. "I don't know," she whispered finally. "I don't know. It just didn't feel right." "Happened." Martin stood, the weight of her confession pressing down on him like a physical force. His mind raced as 1,000 thoughts collided in his head. He wanted to shout, to scream, to demand that she explain herself. But the words wouldn't come. He didn't understand how she could betray everything they had built together. Had their marriage meant so little to her? Had he meant so little? "I thought we were happy," Martin said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We were," Emily replied, tears streaming down her face now. "We were, I don't know. I changed, and I didn't know how to tell you. I'm sorry, Martin. I'm so sorry." But the apology felt hollow. There was no undoing the damage that had been done. Martin stood there feeling like a stranger in his own home. As the realization sank in, the life they had shared was over. "I want to leave," Emily said suddenly, as if the weight of her guilt had finally become too much to bear. "Leave?" Martin asked, his voice incredulous. "Just like that?" Emily nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "I've made a mess of everything, Martin. I don't want to hurt you anymore. I can't stay." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Martin felt like he had been punched in the gut. Everything he had tried to ignore, to pretend wasn't happening, was now unraveling before him. And now, she wanted to leave. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall, each second a reminder of the life they had once shared, slipping further and further away. Then, Martin spoke. "If you leave with him now," he said, his voice hard and cold, "you'll never be welcome back here. Ever." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected such finality from Martin, the man who had always been so forgiving, so understanding. But something in his voice told her he meant it. This wasn't a threat. It was a promise. She stood frozen, torn between the man she had once loved and the man she had fallen for. Victor had offered her excitement, something new and different. But at what cost? The realization hit her like a wave. She was about to lose everything, but she had already made her choice. "I'll take the risk," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. But her decision was clear. Martin watched as she turned away from him and walked out the door, the sound of it closing behind her echoing in the now empty apartment. He stood there, numb, staring at the door, knowing that everything had changed. Amélie was gone. The days that followed were some of the darkest of Martin's life. The weight of Amélie's departure pressed down on him like a suffocating blanket. He threw himself into his work, trying to drown out the memories of their life together. But no matter how many hours he spent at the office, the silence of the empty apartment greeted him each night, a constant reminder of what he had lost. He thought about Amélie constantly, wondered if she was happy with Victor, if she had any regrets. But even in his darkest moments, Amélie Martin knew that he had made the right decision in letting her go. He couldn't live with someone who had betrayed him so deeply, no matter how much he had once loved her. Life moved on, slowly but surely, as it always does. Months passed and Martin began to heal, though the scars of Amélie's betrayal would never fully fade. He found solace in his work and eventually in the company of friends who had supported him through the difficult time. Amélie, meanwhile, had quickly realized the mistake she had made. Life with Victor wasn't the adventure she had envisioned. He was controlling, possessive, and had little interest in the things that had once brought her joy. The passion that had once drawn them together had fizzled, replaced by a cold, transactional relationship that left Amélie feeling empty and lost. She missed Martin. She missed the quiet moments they had shared, the sense of home she had felt with him. But more than that, she missed the man who had loved her unconditionally, who had stood by her even when she had pushed him away. One evening, in a moment of weakness, Amélie sent Martin a message. "I made a mistake. I miss us. I miss you." She waited anxiously for his reply, her heart pounding in her chest. But when his response finally came, it was short and final. "You made your choice. Goodbye." As Amélie stared at the message, tears streamed down her face. She had gambled with her life, and she had lost. There was no going back. The dissolution of his marriage had been the most difficult thing Martin had ever experienced, but it had also given him important insight into loyalty and love. Though the future was unclear, he knew that he would be all right because he had discovered a strength within himself that he had not realized he possessed.
What do you make of this? Please let me know in the comments below. Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you next time.